you mentioned it on the Bigger Pockets podcast that you're kind of pursuing this and you follow the FIRE movement. So it's something I'm interested in. I think a lot of people in this community are. Obviously, it's called living off rentals, which kind of indicates that you want to free yourself at some point of the day-to-day, earning money with your time as opposed to earning it with your investment. So can you explain what it is and kind of how you're approaching it?
So FIRE, financially independent, retire early. I wish that there was a real word like FIWO, because I would rather call it financially independent, work optional, because people hear the word retirement and they think, oh, I just want to go sit on the beach, be lazy and get old or get bored. Retirement's boring. Nobody said that you have to retire. We're just saying that work is now optional and you get to choose the work that you do. Are you going to run an investing business? Are you going to start a nonprofit, get involved in philanthropy? Are you going to take a gap year after you retire and figure out what's next for you? I don't like the term retire early because I think it gives a lot of misconceptions about what you're planning on doing if you retire at 35 or 45 or even 50. What are you going to do? So it should just be work optional, and it doesn't even have to be work that pays. You can go join the Peace Corps. You could go volunteer at a homeless shelter every day. It's just, you should be able to choose what you're doing. And in my husband's case, he loves what he does, and he feels like the company that he works for is building a mission of a product or a service that is going to make a big difference in the world. And so far they have been delivering on that mission. And so he really feels a part of that. Does he want to work there until he's 65, 40 hours a week? Does anybody? I don't know. But is he going to quit the second that our rentals can pay for all of our bills? Probably not. So work optional. Kind of figure out what you want to do, where you want to go. So we're working on what they call lean FIRE, which is you could quit your job right now and your rentals will pay all of your bills. But it's kind of like a Dave Ramsey style of beans and rice, lean retirement. And those are for people who hate their jobs. Yeah. That's not us. I run a real estate business. I am under no illusions that I am a real estate investor, if that makes sense. I especially in my apartment business, because we flip those. I call them the slow flip because it takes a couple years to flip an apartment building, but it's still a flip. Mm-hmm. What the long-term stuff is the passive income that I invest in other people's deals. It's the rentals that I'm planning on keeping as a legacy property for years and years and years. And so I think that running a business or having a job is very different than retiring off your rentals. Because right now, my big commercial projects, those are large paydays out there in the future. There's not a lot of cash flow from those. So how am I supposed to keep my lights on? If I retired off and lived off like acquisition fees and the cash flow, I'd need a lot more buildings because I invest a lot of money in the next project and I can't be using that to keep the lights on or eat that because then I won't have any cash to go grease the wheels for the next thing I want to do. And so my husband's W-2 is keeping the lights on, and that's how we eat. And I haven't taken a distribution from my business. I just keep reinvesting it all. It never comes out. Eventually, I'm sure the IRS is going to make me take a distribution, but so far they haven't. My CPA is like, maybe next year, the year after, I think about taking a salary or something like that. But so far we haven't done that. And so I feel like you got to figure out how you're going to eat while these investments are gaining traction. And whether that's flipping, wholesaling, running a rental business, running a commercial real estate business like I do, or working a W-2. My commercial real estate business is not feeding me. My duplex and my single families are what's keeping my business alive right now. Yeah. And it's the same way his W-2 is keeping our household alive right now. So I feel like I tell people if you can skip residential, go straight to commercial, you should do it. But at the same time, how are you going to feed yourself? Commercial real estate isn't going to feed you the first deal. It's going to take you 2 years, especially if you're a beginner, because eventually you start getting acquisition fees. But as beginners, you didn't raise all the money because nobody believed that you could do it. So you had to put some of your own in and you didn't get an acquisition fee. So it's actually a net loss for the first couple of years, right? You get good at it after a while and people are saying, oh, I want you to invest my money. And you can start taking your acquisition or your development fee. But the first couple, especially in a joint venture, there's no acquisition fee in a joint venture. Yeah. That'll get you flagged by the SEC, taking that in a joint venture. So you can take a cut or a wage or something like that from it, depending on how you structure it. But these deals don't feed you. So think about, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to lean fire? How am I going to just keep the lights on while I'm building this business? So we looked at our budget very carefully, and I said our largest expense is our housing, and there's really nothing else we can cut. We own our cars. We don't eat out. We hardly ever go to movies. Like $10 a month getting rid of Netflix is not going to move our needle. And it wasn't like we had 100 of those things that we could cut. This housing budget should be cut by at least $1,500 a month, based on what I'm seeing around us. We don't have to live here. We can go buy a $350,000 house and fix it up or something. He's like, oh, I don't want to fix up a house again. So he said, what about that townhome that we looked at when we first moved here, that first house we were thinking about investing in and buying? And I said, well, the prices on those have gone way up. They've appreciated. He's like, oh, well, then we probably should have bought one. That's right. I forgot our roots were to buy new construction and let it appreciate. Like, that was how we had been doing it. That was house hacking. That was what was working for us. And I said, no, let's buy like something like what we did in our last house, where we remodel it and maybe have some property. And I can't stand a yard. You got to manicure the whole yard. I like either acreage. You could throw a goat on there, go mow the lawn, or it's small, like a condo or a townhouse where there is no yard, or the HOA takes care of it. So I can't stand like a suburban weeding. It's just, I want to spend my weekends doing something other than cleaning my garage and weeding my yard. So I said, we got to get out of here. House is too big. It's not too expensive because we can't afford it, right? It's not where we want to choose to spend our money. So you got to think about that. Yes, you just because you can afford it, is that you're choosing to do this with your money instead of that. And I was like, I don't want to do this with our money. I want to do this. So we went out and looked at the same sales guy. Went in there and like, hey, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, we didn't buy that townhouse and we're dumb. We should have, because it appreciated almost $100,000, like maybe $80,000 in that 3 years. Like, we want one now and we're gonna move into it. And he was like, hey, welcome back. So we went out to the brand new community. There was nothing there, and same floor plan, everything, and bought one. And I think we spent $360,000 on it, up from, because it was the first one in the neighborhood. And now we put up with construction and all that, and it's appreciated over the last 6 months. Like I said, we just closed yesterday, and it's already gone up $40,000 in 6 months. We could HELOC our down payment back out like in a couple months when a few of them sell, and we get some good comps. It's just, why not? And our housing costs are going to go down almost $1,500 a month. Yeah. And it's a better rental if we want to go out of town for the weekend or a week or 3 months. It makes a great Airbnb or rental. This house doesn't make a rental. We rent this out on the open market. We're at break even.
Yeah.
Just, why would I even do that? If I refinance out all the equity we have in this house that we're living in, it's a negative cash flow rental. Yeah. So my equity feels trapped in here. So we have to sell it, refinance it, and do negative cash flow. So I met a guy recently, reached out. He's like, hey, I want to do a large commercial assisted living. I do small ones. I think that's great. I'll do the assisted living. You do the large multifamily part. We put together and do a large assisted living. I said, that's great. Let's start looking. And somebody put the idea in my head of residential assisted living. I said, hey, do you want to turn my house into assisted living? And you run it, and I'll just do all the marketing and whatever. He's like, yeah, let's do that. So this is our first partnership. He has experience. He has a master's degree in healthcare administration, and he runs a couple of little ones already. So it was just perfect. I don't have to be day-to-day operator. I am not a day-to-day operator. I am not a detail-oriented task checklist kind of person. So he's taking care of that. He's also really good at the financial management, which again, I am terrible at. I'm so grateful for John in Little Rock because he does all that. And then my partner, Christopher, and my Idaho one does most of that. So it's just a really great marriage of like I said, opposing skill sets. Yeah. Where I'm good at this and he's good at that, and it's not the same thing. But personality-wise, we get along really well. So we're turning this place into assisted living. We're projecting maybe a $2,000 to $4,000 a month profit for each partner. and you just can't pass that up. So it does give me assisted living experience so that I can go now do a large multifamily assisted living, which gets back to my roots of multifamily investing. Yeah. And so I feel like even this, it's a total departure. For me, it's fairly passive, and it gives me the experience to go do it on a larger scale.
Yeah. Wow. So many great points in there. I mean, just going back to, the FIRE and how there's different approaches to it, like you brought up, like you're approaching it the lean FIRE route, which is one of the ways you can approach it. But not to belabor goals, but like having your goals and understanding how you're approaching FIRE leads to all these decisions that you make along the way, and the types of properties that you're buying, and is it going to result in this goal of the type of financial independence that I want. Because somebody, like you mentioned, like it's such a great point. If you're somebody out there who wants financial independence, but you want it next year, then commercial properties might not be the way to go. And and you need to think about, okay, like I'm going to buy properties differently, and maybe you'll leverage more, but it'll be on like lower cost properties that'll really cash flow, so that you can start to really generate cash flow. They're not going to appreciate long term, but like you said, like it's a little bit longer outlook for you. Your husband enjoys his job, you enjoy your job, so you're willing to invest in these properties that will most likely lead to much greater financial independence in the future. So, I think
come at it from both ends. There's no rule that says you need to focus on long-term goals that are going to cash flow or give you a huge payday, like this development in downtown Salt Lake. We'll see next year how it's going, but like that has the potential to not have the highest return, but the highest dollar ball of cash, if that makes sense. So I am definitely focusing heavily on that project. It takes up a lot of my thoughts, my time, my efforts. But that doesn't mean that I can't have another single family, or that I can't move out of this house, turn it into AL and house hack in the smaller one. So we're coming at it from both ends as we're getting ready to kind of jump off of this W-2 ship, eventually go to consulting or whatever that's going to look like. I don't want to jump into the ocean. I'm bringing my other boat there, and maybe I have to swim to it a little bit, but I'm certainly going to try and bring those two things closer together, from spending less and earning more. You don't have to choose between one or the other unless it's stealing your focus. Yeah. If you're being very distracted by earning more or even spending less, you really need to get in there and say, how do these two different goals, where do they align? And how can I kill two birds with one stone? So for us, the lifestyle of living in this house isn't fitting us. We don't want a yard. The house is too big. There are rooms we're not even using. We don't want to do yard work. We want to travel on the weekends. So our lifestyle was like, well, we need a house that's easier to care for, easier to rent out, cheaper. And because it was cheaper, we were like, oh, what can we do with that other $1,500 a month? We can go put it in another project, another real estate project, or even Bitcoin if we feel like it. Who cares? We're just trying to spend less and earn more, so that that goal of FIRE, where you're retiring with more money than you need to pay your bills, is faster. But you can't do it without long term. Yeah. What if you just focus on the short term, and then 5 years later you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have bought an apartment complex because my friend just made $1 million off that one they sold, right, and now we still haven't done it. So be thinking of both.